My sister begged me to help her move out. I gave her $4,000 and 5 months of free rent. But when my car broke down and I couldn't keep paying, she made up that I made advances on her, and my parents expelled me from the family. Years later, she was arrested for scamming 5 people. I'm 29 years old, work at a logistics company for like 6 years now, and I need to tell this story because it's basically had me mentally exhausted for the past few months, and only now, after everything that happened, things finally make some sense. I guess I should start at the beginning. Or with my sister Madison. She's 5 years younger than me, she's 24 now, and throughout our entire lives she was always, I don't know how to say it, my parents' favorite. Not in a super obvious way at first. But those things you start noticing over time, like when she messed up, my parents would tell her, "Oh honey, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes." But when I did something wrong, it was Joshua. You need to be more responsible. You need to set an example. I grew up being the older brother who had to take care of her, protect her, and honestly, for a long time, it didn't bother me because I loved her. I mean, she was my little sister, and that was that. My parents, Jennifer and David, they were always kind of intense, really involved in everything, the type who want to control every aspect of your life but disguise it as concern. When I turned 18, I moved out of the house because I couldn't handle the environment anymore, got myself a job in a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Madison stayed living with them because she was finishing high school, and then she started something like college, though I was never really sure what she was studying exactly because she changed majors like every semester. What I did know was that she was still at my parents' house, and that according to her, they were driving her crazy with their rules and control. And every time we talked on the phone or saw each other, she'd tell me, "Joshua, you don't know how horrible it is living here. They treat me like I'm 12 years old. I can't take it anymore." This went on like that for years, honestly. I'd visit my parents every now and then, like once a month or every 2 months, and it was always the same dynamic, Madison complaining about them and them complaining that Madison wasn't doing anything productive with her life. To be honest, I thought both sides had a point. My parents were suffocating, but Madison wasn't exactly trying very hard to become independent either, let's say. But anyway, I was doing my own thing, working, living my life, trying not to get too involved in the family drama. Everything changed like a year and a half ago. When Madison called me one day crying, like really sobbing on the phone, saying she couldn't take living with my parents anymore, that they were destroying her mentally, that she needed to get out of there urgently, but had no money or way to do it. She told me, "Joshua, you're the only person I can trust, the only one who understands me. Please help me get out of here and I promise I'll get a job. I'll be responsible. I just need a chance to prove I can do it on my own." And look, at that moment I was making decent money. I'd gotten a raise recently, had some savings, and I thought, well, she's my sister. If she's really having such a hard time, maybe she does need this opportunity to grow and mature away from my parents. So I told her yes, that I was going to help her. We looked for an apartment for her. Nothing luxurious, but it was nice, in a decent area, and I paid the first month's rent, the deposit, which was like another month's rent, and also bought all the basic furniture, like a bed, a couch, table, chairs, everything necessary so she could move in and be comfortable. In total, I spent like $4,000 on everything, which was basically all my savings for the year, but I thought it's worth it if this gives Madison the push she needs to get on track. I told her, "Look, I'm going to help you with rent for 2 or 3 months while you get a job, but you need to start looking for work right away, like immediately, because I can't maintain this indefinitely." She was super grateful at first, literally, crying with happiness, saying I was the best brother in the world, that she wasn't going to disappoint me, that she'd get a job in 2 weeks max. My parents got angry when they found out. They called me to yell at me about how could I think of taking Madison out of the house when she clearly wasn't ready to live alone, that I was condemning her to failure. But I told them Madison was already an adult and had the right to try. In retrospect, I should have listened to that little voice in my head that said, "This isn't going to end well." The first 2 months, Madison seemed to be doing okay. We talked often. She'd send me photos of the apartment, told me she was sending out resumes, that she had some interviews scheduled. I kept paying her rent on time, like on the first of every month there was the transfer. But when the third month came and I asked her how the job search was going, she started with the excuses. That she hadn't found anything she liked, that the jobs they offered her paid too little, that she wanted something worthwhile. I told her, Madison, you can't be so picky when you don't have money. You have to take whatever to start. But she'd get defensive and say I didn't understand, that she couldn't work at just anything, because that would affect her mental health. By the fourth month, I was already like, okay, something's not right here. I went to visit her one day without warning, and the apartment was a disaster. There was clothes everywhere, dirty dishes, and when I asked her what she'd done that day, she said she'd gone out with some friends. I asked her and what happened with looking for work, and she said, oh, Joshua, it's just that I also need time for myself. I can't be stressed all day looking for jobs. I tried to stay calm and told her, look, it's been 4 months. I've given you time, but you seriously need to get something soon because my finances aren't set up to keep maintaining 2 places. She promised me that week she was going to get serious, but another week passed, and then another, and nothing. I kept paying rent because I didn't want to leave her on the street either, but I was starting to resent it hard because, while I was there sacrificing myself, she was posting Instagram stories about going out to eat, bars, concerts, and I was thinking, with what money are you doing all that if supposedly you don't even have money for food? When I'd ask her, she'd say her friends invited her, that she wasn't spending anything, but still it didn't add up. Then the 5th month came, and that's when everything went to hell. My car broke down, like completely dead, and the repair was going to cost like $1,500. I didn't have that money available because I'd spent it all on Madison, so I had to borrow from a friend and start making monthly payments. I called Madison and told her, look, this month I'm not going to be able to pay your rent. My car broke down and I need that money. But you've already been living there for 2 months, and you seriously need to get a job or find another solution because I can't keep doing this. You know what she did? She went hysterical. She started screaming at me on the phone about how could I do that to her, that she depended on me, that I'd promised to help her, that if I didn't pay her rent, she was going to get evicted and it would all be my fault. I told her, Madison, it's been 5 months. It's not like I haven't given you time, and I have my own expenses and problems. I can't keep doing this. She cried, told me I was a terrible brother, that I was abandoning her just like everyone else, and then hung up on me. I tried calling her again, but she didn't answer. Like 2 weeks went by without me hearing anything from her. I'd send her messages asking if she was okay, if she'd been able to solve the rent thing, and nothing. She'd leave me on read or just wouldn't open the messages. I was worried but also angry because I was thinking I'm here anxious about her, and she doesn't even have the decency to answer me. Finally, I wrote her like, look, Madison, I know you're angry, but at least tell me you're okay and that you found a solution. And she responded with a super cold message saying, I'm fine, don't worry. I already solved it. Clearly, I can't count on you. That hurt. I'm not gonna lie. After everything I'd done for her, after draining my savings to help her, that's how she responded? But anyway, I thought maybe she needs time to calm down and then we'll talk like adults. Except what happened next was worse than I imagined. Like a week later, I get a call from my mom, Jennifer, and from the tone I knew trouble was coming. She says, Joshua, what did you do to your sister? And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? And she starts yelling at me about how could I think of taking Madison out of the house just to abandon her, that Madison was devastated, that she almost got evicted, that she had to ask them for money to be able to eat because I left her with nothing. I was in total shock, like literally mouth open listening to this completely distorted version of what had happened. I tried to explain, Mom. I helped her for 5 months, paid for everything. She didn't look for work. My car broke down and I explained the situation to her, but my mom wouldn't even let me talk. She just kept saying I was irresponsible, that I'd forced Madison to leave, only to leave her stranded, that I was a disgrace of an older brother. Then my dad, David, called me with the same story, saying he was disappointed in me. How could I be so selfish that Madison was crying every day because of me? I tried to defend myself. Like I told them, look, I have the bank transfers, I have the messages. I can show you that I kept my part and that Madison's the one who didn't do anything to help herself. But my dad cut me off and said, I'm not interested in seeing anything. I know your sister wouldn't lie about something like this. Clearly, you did something wrong. And that's when I realized it didn't matter what I said or what evidence I had. They'd already decided to believe Madison and I was the villain of the story. I spent like 3 days processing that, feeling like garbage, questioning whether I'd really done something wrong, if I'd been unfair to Madison. But then I started getting angry because, no, I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd been more than generous, and she had blatantly lied to me and to my parents. So I decided to confront her. I went to her apartment without warning, knocked on the door, and when she opened it, she just like froze looking at me. I told her we need to talk about what you told our parents. And she tried to close the door on me, but I put my foot in and said, Madison, seriously, what's wrong with you? Why did you lie to them? She got super defensive, saying she hadn't lied, that I had abandoned her, that I'd promised to help her, and didn't follow through. I said, Madison, I helped you for 5 months, paid for everything. You didn't do anything to get a job, and when I had an emergency and explained to you I couldn't keep paying, you stopped talking to me and then made up a whole fake story. She yelled at me that I didn't understand her situation, that she'd been depressed, that she couldn't work like that, and that if I really loved her, I'd keep helping her without conditions. I told her that's not fair, Madison. I'm not your personal bank. And she literally said, well, you should have thought about that before offering to help. Right there, it became crystal clear to me that there was no remorse, that she genuinely believed I owed her that help for life. I left there feeling worse than before. The next day, my parents called to say they were going to have a family meeting to resolve this once and for all, that we were all going to sit down like adults to talk. I didn't want to go. I literally told them there's no point. You've already decided Madison's right. But they insisted so much that I finally agreed. The meeting was at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon, and from the moment I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Madison was there with a victim face, my parents were serious, and I was mentally prepared to be attacked. And yeah, basically that's what it was. My mom started saying this had gotten out of control, that we were family and had to find a solution. I took out my phone and said, okay, here are all the transfers I made to Madison. You can see the dates and amounts. It's exactly 5 months of rent plus everything I paid at the beginning. And here are the messages where I explained my car situation. My dad barely looked at the phone and said, well, but you still abandoned her when she needed you most. And Madison added, yeah, you promised you were going to help me until I got stable. I said, Madison, 5 months is more than enough time to get at least a part-time job. You didn't do anything. And she started crying, saying I didn't understand her mental health, that she'd been having a horrible time. My parents looked at me like I was a monster, and my mom said, let's see, Joshua. Clearly, your sister has been struggling with difficult things. She needed more support. I was so frustrated I almost got up and left, but I stayed and said, okay, so what do you want me to do? And my dad said I should apologize to Madison and commit to helping her at least another 3 months while she recovers. I laughed, like I literally let out a laugh because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and told them no, I'm definitely not doing that. Madison is an adult and needs to take responsibility for her life. They didn't like that at all, and the meeting ended with my mom telling me to leave if I wasn't going to be part of the solution, that I was being cruel and selfish. I left there thinking, that's it, it's over. I'm not going to have any more contact with any of them for a while because this is too toxic. But the story didn't end there, not even close. Like 2 weeks later, I get a call from Madison's apartment landlord, an older man named Mr. Gonzalez. And he says, hey, you're Joshua, Madison's brother, right? And I'm like, yeah, why? And he says, well, your sister abandoned the apartment. She left without warning, left several damages on the walls, and some furniture is missing, the ones you bought at the beginning. And since you signed as guarantor, I need you to take care of the damages and the pending rent. I was like, what? What do you mean she abandoned the apartment? And he explained that it had been like a week since he'd seen Madison, that he'd gone in with his spare key and found the place almost empty with holes in the walls and stains on the carpet. I was in total shock. I asked him how much the damage was, and he said like $1,200. I told him I needed to verify this first before paying anything, and I went to the apartment with the landlord. Sure enough, the place was trashed. There were marks from dragged furniture, peeling paint, and the couch and table I'd bought were missing. Mr. Gonzalez showed me that Madison hadn't paid the last 2 months of rent either, so in total, she owed him like $3,000. I was furious but also confused. Like, where did Madison go? Why did she take the furniture? What's going on? I called Madison, but her phone was off. I called my parents and my mom answered super calmly, saying, "Oh yeah, Madison's living here again." And I'm like, "What? Since when?" And she said, "Since 2 weeks ago." She said she couldn't afford the apartment anymore and needed to come back home. I told her about the destroyed apartment, the missing furniture, the debt, and my mom was quiet for a moment and then said, "Well, she told me she had to leave the apartment because you stopped paying." And I yelled at her mom, "I showed you the transfers. I kept my part. Madison's the one who never paid anything and now left me with a $3,000 debt." My mom said in a super defensive tone, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, Joshua. Maybe Madison sold the furniture because she needed money to eat since you abandoned her." I hung up because I felt like my head was going to explode. I spent the next few days trying to process everything, wondering how I'd gotten to this point, how my family could be so blind. And then my cousin Sarah, who's like my age and I've always been close with, wrote me saying, "Joshua, I need to show you something." She sent me screenshots from Madison's Instagram, and there was my dear sister at beaches, expensive restaurants, with new clothes, what looked like trips and expensive outings, all during the month she was supposedly depressed and broke. Sarah told me I've been seeing this for months and didn't know whether to tell you, but after finding out what happened, I felt you had to know. I was looking at those photos feeling my blood boil. There were photos of Madison in Cancun, in Miami, at concerts, at bars, always surrounded by people, always looking happy and carefree. I asked Sarah where she was getting money for all that, and she said, "I don't know. But she's definitely not depressed or having a hard time like she says." I sent the screenshots to my parents with a message saying, "Look at this. This is what your perfect daughter has been doing while I was supporting her and while you were blaming me." But they didn't respond. Madison didn't respond to my messages either. She clearly knew I'd discovered her. Like a week after that, I got a message on Facebook from a guy named Tyler, who introduced himself as Madison's ex-boyfriend. He told me he found out through mutual friends about what had happened and wanted to tell me something important. We agreed to meet for coffee, and when we met, he told me, "Look, I dated Madison like 2 years ago. Everything was fine at first, but then she started asking me to lend her money. For her rent, for her things, always with promises that she'd pay me back. Until I broke up with her. And when I did, she went to my family and friends saying I'd mistreated her, that I'd left her with nothing. Basically the same story she did to you." I was frozen listening to him. Tyler told me she has a pattern. She finds someone generous, squeezes them until they can't take it anymore, and then plays victim when the person gets tired. That blew my mind because it meant Madison hadn't just manipulated me, but that this was something she did systematically. Tyler gave me the contact of another girl, Morgan, who had been Madison's roommate at some point. I wrote to Morgan and she confirmed exactly the same thing, that Madison had borrowed like $800 from her for an emergency, never paid her, and then just disappeared and stopped responding. Morgan told me, "Honestly, Joshua, your sister is a professional scammer. I'm so sorry you went through this, but you're not the first and won't be the last if no one stops her." Over the next few weeks, I started getting more information from different people. Basically, word spread about what Madison had done to me, and people who knew her started contacting me with their own stories. There was a clear pattern. Madison would approach good people who wanted to help her, make up stories about how bad she was having it, get money or favors, and then disappear when she couldn't get anything more. I felt like an idiot for having fallen for this, but also validated because now I had proof that I wasn't the problem. It was her. I sent all this information to my parents, like extensive messages with screenshots, testimonies, everything. My mom finally responded saying that those people just wanted to make Madison look bad, that they surely had their own reasons to lie, and that I was obsessed with destroying my sister's reputation. My dad didn't even respond. That's when I realized it didn't matter how much evidence I had. They were always going to protect Madison, and I was always going to be the bad guy. I decided I wasn't going to waste any more energy trying to convince them of anything. Like 3 months went by without contact with my family. I continued with my life, working, going out with my friends, started dating someone new, and didn't have that constant stress of wondering what drama Madison was going to cause now or when my parents were going to call to blame me for something. Sarah kept me updated occasionally, told me Madison was still living with my parents but was now hanging out with new people, people who, according to Sarah, seemed kind of suspicious. She sent me photos of Madison with a girl named Alexis, who apparently was involved in shady businesses, like multi-level marketing schemes and stuff like that. I wasn't even surprised anymore, honestly. And then, like 2 months ago, I got a call from Madison. It was like 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday and I was working. I saw her name on the screen and almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I answered, and she was like super casual, as if nothing had happened, saying, "Hey Joshua, how have you been? It's been so long since we talked." I literally stayed quiet because I couldn't believe the audacity. She kept talking like we were best friends, asking me about my work, my life, all super normal. Finally, I said, "Madison, why are you calling me?" And she said, "Well, I've been thinking a lot and I think we should fix things. We're siblings and family is important, don't you think?" I asked her, and I'm supposed to forget everything that happened, and she said, "Oh, Joshua, it's been so long, we should get over it already. Everyone makes mistakes." I said, "Madison, you didn't make mistakes. You lied to me, manipulated me, cost me thousands of dollars, destroyed my relationship with our parents. Those aren't mistakes. That's abuse." She was quiet for a moment and then said, "Wow, I didn't know you were so dramatic. I just wanted to reconnect, but I see you're still angry. When you're truly ready to forgive, call me," and hung up on me. I was left there with the phone in my hand, thinking this person is completely disconnected from reality. Like 2 weeks after that call, I get another call, but this time from my mom, and from her tone I immediately knew something serious had happened. She says, "Joshua, your sister is in trouble." And I'm thinking, here we go again. I say, "What happened now?" And she tells me, crying, that Madison was arrested, that they're accusing her of stealing thousands of dollars from some friends, that she's in jail and needs someone to pay her bail, which is like $10,000. I was like, wow, okay. And I asked her what exactly happened. And my mom told me that apparently Madison had asked several girls to lend her money, saying it was to invest in a business, something related to that Alexis girl, and that she never returned their money. And when they confronted her, Madison blocked them and disappeared, until one of them went to the police, and that's when they discovered there were like 5 more victims. My mom was asking me to help her gather the money for bail, saying Madison needed her family now more than ever. I said, "Mom, no, I'm definitely not giving a penny to get Madison out of jail. She needs to face the consequences of her actions." And my mom started crying harder, saying how could I be so cruel to my own sister, that she was suffering. I told her Madison has been doing this for years, that she has a documented pattern of scamming people, that what she needs isn't to be rescued again, but to finally learn that her actions have consequences. My mom called me horrible and hung up on me. Later, my dad called, trying to reason with me, telling me he understood I was angry, but we couldn't leave Madison in jail, that she was going to have a criminal record, that her life would be ruined. I said, "Dad, her life is already ruined. She ruined it herself with her decisions, and you guys contributed by never making her responsible for anything. Maybe if you had let her face consequences before, we wouldn't have gotten to this point." My dad got angry and told me that if I didn't help them to never speak to them again, that for them I was no longer part of the family. I said, "That's fine, if that's what you want," and hung up. I haven't spoken to them since then. I found out through Sarah that they finally gathered the money for bail by selling some things and borrowing from relatives, that Madison got out but has to go to court and will probably end up with probation or something like that because there's a lot of evidence against her. Sarah told me Madison is living with them again, and supposedly she's remorseful, going to therapy and everything, but I honestly don't care anymore. I cut contact completely with my parents and Madison, blocked their numbers, deleted them from social media, everything. Do I feel bad about it? Sometimes, like random moments where I think maybe I should have handled things differently, maybe if he'd been firmer from the beginning, or if I'd set clearer boundaries, none of this would have happened. But most of the time, I feel liberated. Honestly, for years I was carrying the weight of being the responsible older brother, the one who had to fix everything, the one who had to put up with favoritism and manipulation and stay there because family is family. Now I understand that family isn't just blood, it's mutual respect, it's real support, it's honesty, and I didn't have any of that with them. My life now is calmer. I work, hang out with my friends, I'm starting to date someone new, and I don't have that constant stress of wondering what drama Madison's gonna cause now, or when my parents are gonna call to blame me for something. Sarah is still my connection to that part of the family and keeps me informed on the basics, but without pressuring me to come back. She told me recently that Madison asked about me, wanted to know how I was doing, and Sarah told her she wasn't going to be an intermediary. That if Madison wanted to talk to me, she'd have to earn that privilege first by making real changes in her life and taking responsibility for all the damage she caused. Madison apparently didn't respond to that. I guess the lesson I learned from all this is that you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves, and that it's okay to set boundaries even with family, especially with family. I spent a lot of time feeling guilty for not doing more for Madison, for not being the perfect brother my parents wanted me to be. But now I understand that nothing I did would have been enough because the problem was never me. It was her, and it was my parents for enabling her behavior for so long. It cost me thousands of dollars, years of stress, and my relationship with my family to learn that, but in the end, it was worth it because now I have peace of mind. There are still days where I wonder if Madison will ever truly change, if she'll have that moment of clarity where she understands all the damage she caused and genuinely wants to make things right. Part of me hopes so, not because I want to have a relationship with her again, but because no one should live being as miserable and destructive as she's been. But that's not my problem or my responsibility anymore. I did more than anyone would have done, and it wasn't enough. So now it's up to her to decide what kind of person she wants to be and live with those consequences. My parents will probably never admit they were wrong, that their favoritism and denial contributed to creating the monster Madison became. They'll keep blaming me, telling anyone who'll listen that I abandoned my sister in her moment of need, that I'm a bad son and a bad brother. And that's okay. Let them think that. I know the truth. The people who matter to me know the truth, and that's enough for me. I don't need their validation or approval to know I did the right thing in the end. Sometimes I think about everything I could have done with those $4,000 I spent on Madison, or the time and emotional energy I invested trying to help her and then trying to make my parents see reality. I could have traveled, invested in myself, saved for my future, but well, I guess it was an expensive but necessary lesson. Now I know exactly what kind of boundaries I need to set in my life and what kind of people are worth spending my time and resources on. Madison isn't one of those people, and for the first time in years I feel completely at peace with that decision.